Right now, there are plants growing in ditches, vacant lots, and maybe your own backyard that soldiers used to stop battlefield wounds, that kept entire communities alive through centuries of plague and pandemic, long before there was a pharmacy on every corner. Most of us walk past them every single day without a second glance. But here's what's changed. Modern science is now catching up to what our great-grandparents already knew. Peer-reviewed studies, clinical trials, published research, and one by one, these plants are being proven right. Today I'm giving you the 15 most powerful forgotten medicinal plants that actually have the science to back them up. And stick around, because number 14 contains a compound that researchers are now calling one of the most promising weapons against antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and it has been in use for over 2,000 years. 1. Calendula, the wound flower. Calendula officinalis, commonly called pot marigold, is one of the oldest wound care remedies in recorded history. Medieval soldiers carried the dried flowers into battle to pack directly into cuts and lacerations. They called it the war flower, not because of how it looked, but because of what it could do when you had nothing else. And this wasn't folk superstition. Flowers are loaded with triterpene saponins and flavonoids, bioactive compounds with real, documented anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Wound Care found that calendula ointment significantly accelerated the healing of surgical wounds compared to petroleum jelly alone. Another study demonstrated clear benefits for radiation-induced skin damage in cancer patients undergoing treatment. The way to use it is simple. Infuse the dried flower heads in a carrier oil like olive or coconut oil for 4 to 6 weeks, strain and combine with beeswax for a salve. What you end up with is something that handles minor cuts, burns, scrapes, and inflamed skin better than most over-the-counter options, with zero side effects. Pharmaceutical companies have never pursued calendula seriously because you cannot patent a flower. But for anyone who wants a first-aid solution they can grow themselves, this is where the list starts. 2. Comfrey, the bone knitter. The old folk name for comfrey is knitbone, and that name alone tells you how much people trusted it. For centuries, herbalists applied comfrey root poultices directly over broken bones, severe bruises, sprains, and torn muscle, swearing it made the body repair itself faster than it had any right to. Modern science has now confirmed exactly why. Symphytum officinale root contains a compound called allantoin, which has been shown in laboratory and clinical research to actively stimulate cell proliferation, meaning it signals your body to produce new tissue at an accelerated rate. A 2004 double-blind clinical trial published in Phytomedicine found that a comfrey root extract cream significantly reduced pain and improved function in patients with acute ankle sprains. A 2012 study in the same journal confirmed comparable results for lower back pain. Another trial showed measurable improvement in osteoarthritis of the knee. This is peer-reviewed, published evidence, not anecdote. There is one essential caveat. Comfrey is for external use only. The plant contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids that are toxic to the liver when consumed internally. But applied to the skin as a salve or cream over bruises, sprains, and muscle injuries, it remains one of the fastest-acting soft tissue healers in botanical medicine. Comfrey largely disappeared from mainstream use because modern medicine focused on the internal toxicity concern and never looked seriously at its topical potential. That was medicine's loss. For the sprained ankles, strained backs, and bruised tissue that happen to all of us constantly, comfrey is worth knowing. 3. Mullein, the lung cleaner. You have almost certainly seen mullein without knowing what it was. It's that tall, dramatic plant with velvety leaves and a long yellow flower spike that grows in vacant lots, along roadsides, and in disturbed soil across North America, Europe, and Asia. For hundreds of years, it was the go-to remedy for any respiratory complaint: cough, bronchitis, asthma, chest congestion, tuberculosis. Verbascum thapsus earned the nickname nature's toilet paper for its leaves, but its real gift is what it does for your lungs. The leaves contain saponins that function as natural expectorants, helping to break up and mobilize mucus so your body can clear it rather than letting it sit in your chest and develop into an infection. Multiple reviews of the ethnobotanical and preclinical literature confirm anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity against respiratory pathogens, including Klebsiella pneumoniae and Staphylococcus aureus. The traditional preparation is a strong tea of the dried leaves. Careful. Why strain through cheesecloth or a coffee filter to remove the fine leaf hairs? Drink 2 to 3 cups daily during a chest cold. Some traditional healers also infuse the flowers in olive oil as a topical treatment for ear infections and ear pain, a use that small clinical studies have also supported. Mullein disappeared from pharmacy shelves because synthetic cough suppressants arrived and were easier to mass produce. But there is a crucial difference. Most cough suppressants tell your body to stop coughing. Mullein helps your body do what it's trying to do, actually clear the infection out. That distinction matters more than most people realize. 4. Plantain Weed, the trailside first aid kit. Not the tropical fruit, the low-growing weed with oval-ribbed leaves and thin flower spikes that grows in almost every lawn, trail margin, and sidewalk crack in the world. Native Americans called Plantago Major white man's footprint because it seemed to appear everywhere European settlers walked. But indigenous peoples across multiple continents had been using this plant long before that, and they understood something modern pharmacology has since confirmed. Plantain weed is one of the most reliable topical anti-infectives and wound healers in the plant kingdom. The leaves contain aucubin, a compound with documented anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, as well as allantoin, the same cell-proliferating compound found in Comfrey, and tannins that help seal minor wounds. A clinical study published in an Iranian medical journal found that plantain ointment outperformed standard medical treatment in the healing of second-degree burns. The traditional application is almost embarrassingly simple. Find a leaf, crush it between your fingers to break the cell walls, and apply it directly to a cut, insect sting, splinter site, or minor burn. Within minutes, the inflammation begins to calm. You can also brew a strong tea from dried leaves to use as an antimicrobial wound wash. Plantain became invisible to modern medicine precisely because it's so common. We've been conditioned to believe effective medicine must be rare, expensive, or difficult to access. Plantain is none of those things. It's at your feet right now. 5. Yarrow, the soldier's herb. Achillea millefolium. The genus name comes from Achilles, the Greek hero, who according to legend was taught by the centaur Chiron to use this plant to stop bleeding from battle wounds. Whether that mythology is literally true or not, it reflects something real. Yarrow has been used by soldiers, hunters, and field medics across virtually every culture that encountered it. What makes yarrow exceptional is that it performs 2 functions that most medicinal plants only do one of. It is both hemostatic, meaning it actively shortens bleeding time and promotes clotting, and vulnerary, meaning it accelerates wound healing once bleeding is controlled. Studies have confirmed that yarrow extracts contain compounds with genuine hemostatic effects, including flavonoids and tannins that cause vasoconstriction in small vessels. The plant also has documented anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, which helps explain why wounds treated with yarrow historically showed lower rates of infection. It grows wild across temperate regions of the northern hemisphere, producing flat-topped clusters of tiny white or pale pink flowers on stiff stems. The fresh aerial parts can be bruised and applied directly to cuts to stop bleeding. A strong tea can be drunk for fever and as an anti-inflammatory tonic. For anyone who spends time hiking, camping, or working in the field, recognizing yarrow is genuinely useful knowledge. There are moments when it grows right where you need it. 6. White horehound, the original cough drop. Before there were Halls, there was horehound candy. Marubium vulgare was so effective for coughs and chest congestion that it was made into commercial lozenges and hard candies sold in pharmacies and general stores across America and Europe well into the 20th century. It didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because pharmaceutical cough formulas arrived and were cheaper to produce at scale. The plant contains a compound called marubin, which has been studied and confirmed as a natural bronchodilator and expectorant. It works by stimulating secretions in the bronchial passages, thinning mucus, and making a cough more productive, actually moving infection out of your lungs rather than suppressing the cough reflex. The German Commission E, one of the world's most rigorous herbal regulatory bodies, officially approved horehound for the treatment of respiratory tract inflammation and productive coughs. That's a meaningful endorsement from a scientific authority that evaluates herbs the same way conventional drugs are evaluated. The plant grows as a bushy gray-green perennial with fuzzy aromatic leaves and small white flowers. A strong tea. Sweetened with raw honey is the traditional preparation. Some people still make traditional horehound candy by concentrating the tea with sugar. The key distinction between horehound and most modern cough medicines is philosophical. Horehound wants you to cough. It wants your body to do the job properly. That's real healing. 7. Elderberry, the antiviral you can grow. Sambucus nigra has moved from forgotten folk remedy back into mainstream consciousness. And for good reason. The dark berries of the elder tree contain anthocyanins and polyphenols that have been demonstrated in multiple clinical trials to shorten the duration and severity of influenza and upper respiratory infections. A 2016 randomized controlled trial published in Nutrients found that travelers taking elderberry extract had significantly shorter colds and less severe symptoms than those on placebo. A 2004 placebo-controlled study published in the Journal of International Medical Research found that elderberry extract cut the duration of flu illness nearly in half, from an average of 6 days to 3. The proposed mechanism involves flavonoids in the berries binding to respiratory viruses and preventing cellular entry. Elderberry grows as a large shrub or small tree across Europe, North America, and parts of Asia, producing flat clusters of tiny cream-white flowers in spring and heavy clusters of dark purple-black berries in late summer. The berries must be cooked before consumption. Raw berries contain compounds that cause nausea. The traditional preparation is elderberry syrup. Simmer the berries with water, honey, and spices like ginger and cinnamon, strain and store in the refrigerator. Taken at the first sign of a cold or flu, it is one of the best supported natural interventions in botanical medicine. The evidence here is not anecdote. It's controlled trials. Pay attention to it. 8. Valerian, the original sleep aid. Before benzodiazepines, before antihistamine-based sleep aids, before any of the pharmaceutical infrastructure of modern sleep medicine, there was valerian. Valeriana officinalis has been used for anxiety and insomnia since at least the 2nd century AD, when the Greek physician Galen prescribed it for those conditions. Modern pharmacological research has begun to explain why it works. The root contains valerianic acid and isovaleric acid, which appear to interact with GABA receptors in the brain, the same receptors targeted by drugs like diazepam and alprazolam. Unlike those drugs, however, valerian does not cause dependence, cognitive impairment, or withdrawal. A meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Medicine reviewed 16 clinical trials and concluded that valerian may improve sleep quality without producing side effects. A 2002 randomized double-blind trial published in Pharmacology, Biochemistry, and Behavior found significant improvement in both sleep latency and sleep quality compared to placebo. The effect is gentle. It is not appropriate for severe clinical anxiety or insomnia disorders, but for the ordinary tension and overstimulation that disrupts sleep for millions of people, valerian offers something pharmaceutical companies genuinely cannot: effectiveness without the morning fog and without the dependency. The fresh root smells distinctly unpleasant, an odor often described as old socks or dirty cheese. The dried root and standardized extracts are much more manageable in capsule or tincture form. 9. Meadowsweet, the original aspirin. This one deserves to be delivered slowly, because it tells you something important about how modern medicine works and what it sometimes gets wrong. Filipendula ulmaria, the meadowsweet plant, is where aspirin came from. Chemists in the 19th century extracted salicylic acid from meadowsweet flowers and willow bark, then synthesized acetylsalicylic acid, aspirin, as a more stable pharmaceutical form. And aspirin is genuinely useful, but something was lost in that translation. Meadowsweet contains salicylates alongside a complex matrix of other plant compounds, flavonoids, tannins, volatile oils, that together produce anti-inflammatory and analgesic effects. More remarkably, while synthetic aspirin is notorious for irritating the stomach lining and causing gastrointestinal bleeding, traditional herbalists used meadowsweet specifically to soothe stomach inflammation and ulcers. Contemporary research has confirmed that meadowsweet extracts actually show gastroprotective properties. The whole plant protects the stomach while relieving pain. The isolated synthetic version damages it. This is one of the most compelling arguments for whole plant medicine ever documented, and it comes with a direct side-by-side historical comparison. Meadowsweet grows in wet meadows and along stream banks, producing beautiful frothy white clusters of fragrant flowers in summer. A tea of the dried aerial parts is pleasant, mildly sweet, with a faint almond fragrance. Tradit. Ional uses include headache, joint pain, fever, and digestive inflammation, all conditions where aspirin is also used, but without the gastrointestinal cost. 10. Usnea, the wilderness antibiotic. Usnea is technically a lichen, a symbiotic organism composed of fungus and algae, not a plant, but its medicinal properties are extraordinary enough to earn its place on this list. It grows hanging from tree branches in long pale green strands, which is why it's commonly called old man's beard. It thrives in unpolluted, humid forests, particularly in the Pacific Northwest and mountain regions of the Northern Hemisphere. What makes usnea remarkable is usnic acid, a compound with strong, well-documented antimicrobial properties. Laboratory studies have confirmed activity against gram-positive bacteria, including Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus species, as well as Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Reviews have also noted effectiveness against certain antibiotic-resistant strains. Traditional wilderness use involved applying fresh, dampened usnea directly to wounds and infected cuts as an antimicrobial dressing. Modern preparations use alcohol tinctures for better extraction of the active compounds. A usnea tincture applied topically is a legitimate antimicrobial treatment. For anyone spending time in backcountry environments where conventional first aid may not be immediately available, knowing what usnea looks like and how to use it is practical knowledge with real clinical backing. It is slow-growing and should be harvested only from material already fallen or in small amounts from abundant trees. 11. Elecampane, the deep lung tonic. Where Mullein treats the acute chest cold, elecampane treats what's left behind. Inula helenium was the herb that traditional practitioners reached for when someone had been ill for weeks, when a deep, wet cough simply would not resolve, when the lungs felt heavy and chronically congested, when the body couldn't seem to finish healing. This is a root medicine, slow and deep, used in decoctions rather than light teas. The roots contain sesquiterpene lactones, including allantalactone and isolantalactone, that have demonstrated antimicrobial effects, specifically against respiratory pathogens. A research review in the journal Phytotherapy Research documented activity against Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Staphylococcus aureus. The inulin content of the root also supports gut flora, and since gut health and immune function are closely linked, this may partly explain elecampane's traditional reputation for supporting systemic recovery from illness. The plant grows as a tall, bold perennial with enormous textured leaves and bright yellow sunflower-like blooms. The roots are harvested in autumn after the second year of growth, dried, and simmered into a decoction. The taste is complex, bitter, warming, aromatic, and the medicine is taken in small, consistent doses over weeks. This is not a plant for the impatient. It's for the person who has been sick too long and needs their lungs rebuilt, not just treated. Traditional practitioners considered elecampane one of the most important herbs for chronic respiratory weakness, and nothing in the modern research suggests they were wrong. 12. Self-heal, the plant that named itself. Prunella vulgaris has the most direct name in all of herbal medicine, self-heal, or in some traditions, heal-all. Our ancestors were confident enough in this plant's abilities to name it after the thing it did. That confidence turns out to be scientifically defensible. Modern research has identified a range of active compounds in self-heal, rosmarinic acid, ursolic acid, and rutin, with documented anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and antiviral properties. Particularly impressive is recent research showing that self-heal extracts can disrupt bacterial biofilms. Biofilms are the protective matrix that bacteria form around themselves to resist antibiotics and immune defenses. Disrupting a biofilm is something many pharmaceutical antibiotics struggle to do effectively. A plant that appears to do it naturally deserves serious attention. Traditional use centered on 3 areas: wounds, mouth and throat inflammation, and internal inflammatory conditions. A strong tea gargled for sore throats, canker sores, and gum inflammation has been a consistent traditional application across European, Chinese, and Native American herbal traditions. Topical application of crushed fresh leaves to minor cuts and scrapes is equally traditional. The plant grows low in lawns and meadows, producing small purple flower spikes that bloom from early summer through fall. It requires nothing to prepare. When you find it, all you need to do is use it. 13. Oregano, the antimicrobial in your kitchen. Most people keep oregano as a pizza spice. They don't know they're storing a clinically studied antimicrobial agent in their cabinet. Origanum vulgare contains 2 phenolic compounds, carvacrol and thymol, that have been extensively studied for antimicrobial activity. Laboratory research has shown inhibitory effects against Escherichia coli, Salmonella, Staphylococcus aureus, and Candida albicans. A 2011 study published in the Journal of Medicinal Food confirmed significant activity against antibiotic-resistant strains of several pathogens. The essential oil, which contains concentrated levels of these compounds, has demonstrated particularly strong effects in vitro studies. Wild oregano, particularly the Mediterranean varieties from Greece and Turkey, contains the highest concentrations of active compounds. The culinary herb from your garden is genuinely medicinal. The therapeutic oils are real and present. The oil of oregano sold as a supplement contains standardized levels of carvacrol for more consistent dosing. Traditional Mediterranean medicine used oregano tea for coughs, digestive complaints, and as a topical antiseptic. That's consistent with what the chemistry shows it can do. It won't replace antibiotics for a serious systemic infection, but for mild gastrointestinal infections, topical antimicrobial applications, and respiratory illness, oregano is a legitimate botanical tool that most people already own and have simply never considered using medicinally. 14. Barberry, the 2,000-year-old antibiotic. This is the one I mentioned at the beginning. Berberis vulgaris, barberry, contains berberine, one of the most studied plant alkaloids in contemporary pharmacological research. The plant has been used medicinally for at least 2,000 years. It appears in ancient Persian texts, in Ayurvedic medicine, in traditional Chinese medicine, in medieval European herbal manuscripts. The same plant, used the same way, across cultures that had no contact with each other. That kind of convergence means something. Berberine has now been studied in hundreds of laboratory and clinical investigations. It has demonstrated antimicrobial activity against bacteria, fungi, and parasites. It shows anti-inflammatory effects through multiple identified mechanisms. Clinical trials have documented benefits for infectious diarrhea, blood sugar regulation, and lipid metabolism. A 2023 review confirmed that berberine may improve lipid concentrations comparably to some pharmaceutical agents. And critically, researchers have confirmed activity against biofilm-forming bacteria and some antibiotic-resistant strains. These are in vitro findings for the most part, and berberine has low bioavailability that limits clinical application in some contexts. But the convergence of thousands of years of consistent traditional use with modern mechanistic research is too significant to dismiss. The bright yellow inner bark of barberry roots and stems contains the highest concentration of berberine. Traditional preparations include tea and tincture. The taste is intensely bitter, which itself signals the digestive stimulating and antimicrobial activity that bitter alkaloids produce. As antibiotic resistance grows into one of the defining medical challenges of this century, researchers are taking a hard second look at plants like barberry. They should have been looking all along. 15. Ashwagandha, the stress rebuilder. We end with the one that has perhaps the deepest and most current clinical research of any plant on this list. Withania somnifera, ashwagandha, has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years as an adaptogen, a substance that helps the body respond to stress more effectively. For most of that time, it was considered a cornerstone herb for fatigue, anxiety, cognitive decline, and physical resilience. Modern clinical science has now caught up with that reputation in ways that are difficult to dismiss. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial published in Medicine in 2019 found that adults taking ashwagandha root extract showed statistically significant reductions in serum cortisol levels, perceived stress, anxiety scores, and food cravings compared to placebo. A 2015 clinical study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found significant improvements in muscle strength and recovery in resistance-strained adults. Multiple trials have demonstrated improvements in thyroid function in subclinical hypothyroid patients, testosterone levels in men experiencing infertility, and cognitive performance in adults under chronic stress. The active compounds, with analytes, appear to modulate the hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis, the hormonal system that governs your stress response. This is not vague traditional claim. This is measurable biochemical effect confirmed in controlled human trials. Ashwagandha is now widely available as a standardized supplement. The root has a distinctive earthy smell. Taken consistently over 8 to 12 weeks, the effects on stress resilience, sleep quality, and energy are among the most consistently reported improvements in botanical medicine. After 3,000 years, modern science finally proved the ancient practitioners right. Every plant on this list was trusted by people who had nothing else, and it worked well enough that the knowledge survived for centuries. What we're realizing now is that survival wasn't luck, it was earned. Modern research isn't discovering these plants, it's verifying them. The knowledge was already there. If you found this useful, share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment below and tell me which plant you're going to grow or try first. I read every one. And subscribe if you haven't already. Every week we go deeper into the tools for health and self-sufficiency that have been sitting right in front of us all along.